everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we're back again, and here now we have another video for you. And as we wind down to the end of 2023, I thought it'd be a good idea to break down both the worst and the best superhero movies of the year. Now I think it's safe to say that 2023 hasn't showcased the superhero genre at its best, but there were still some good qualities throughout the movies that were released during the year. So just beware that there could be spoilers for all of the movies that came out within 2023, and you can check out all of my more in-depth reviews of the films themselves within the channel, and I'll leave some links within the description. So here we go then, from worst to best, the superhero movies of this year in 2023. And at the bottom of the list, we sadly have to start with The Flash. In what was probably the most hyped of DCEU films of this year, primarily because of the multiversal possibilities, as this story loosely adapted the famous Flashpoint comic book storyline from 2011, which saw Barry Allen going back in time to prevent his mother's murder, inadvertently causing an alternate dystopian timeline. Taking these elements in a much more smaller scale, this story showed Ezra Miller's Flash going back in time where he would meet his younger doppelganger version. Joining up with Supergirl and Batman, they would take on General Zod's invasion of planet Earth. Now simply put, this movie is a mess. Tonally, in terms of its story, even the CGI at times looked very incomplete and unfinished. A lot of the intended comedic elements just didn't work. Even the inclusion of Michael Keaton's iconic Batman, clearly trying to copy what we saw within Spider-Man No Way Home, where we saw the previous actors within that character coming back. This initiative just wasn't enough to save this movie overall. And the movie just was another signal of how the DCU was completely disjointed and all over the place. And I think overall it's a shame, because I think had this movie done right and had it come at the right stage, this really could have been that huge epic culmination. And really this is something that we should have seen at the end of the universe. Something truly epic and something truly definitive. Not a story simply for Flash's first cinematic standalone movie. So all in all, a poor effort and a poor adaptation of a great comic book storyline, and a real low bar, disappointing a lot of DC fans. And unfortunately, that wouldn't be the first time that we will be saying that this year in terms of the DC cinematic universe. And this leads on to the next entry on the list, which is Blue Beetle. This movie being the first for a much lower tier DC character, this interpretation went for the Jamie Reyes version, with Cobra Kai star Xolo Madureira in the lead role. This was another blatant attempt to veer away from the dark grittiness from the Snyder movies, with a much more brighter, energetic, light-hearted tone. And whilst it is to be commended on some level, the movie itself is far too chaotic, it's too frantic. We get a huge fusion of CGI booms and explosions and effects, alongside a very forced and overloaded attempt at comedy. And everything is so heavy-handed that the movie barely takes any time to settle down. And the film also felt too familiar, with so many beats already seen from far superior comic book movies in general, whether it would be the likes of Iron Man, Spider-Man, even Michael Bay's Transformers or the Guyver anime. It all just makes Blue Beetle very disposable and a much more lackluster effort. Which, to be honest, this type of film really should have came out 5 to 7 years earlier, and it probably would have garnered greater success, and it probably should have ended up staying on streaming as originally intended. We then go on to the next entry on this list, another bad effort, this time coming in the form of The Marvels. The sequel to the 2019 Captain Marvel movie, which grossed over $1 billion worldwide. This entry came nowhere near to matching the same result. In fact, the second movie featuring Carol Danvers gained a notoriety for being the lowest ever grossing MCU movie, which is quite shocking when you look at how the MCU started way back in 2008, which went on to become the most dominant franchise in all of Hollywood, very much starting the superhero movie genre domination. The film's story itself, of having Carol Danvers, Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel and Monica Rambeau all switching powers randomly, was never a compelling story even for the most dedicated of MCU fans. The film itself had no real substantial story, we had yet another weak villain, we had some really random out of place sequences involving cats in space, and also a very Bollywood type of dance routine. The film really was all over the place, and the only real saving grace being that the film only ran at around an hour and 45 minutes. And considering the fact that Captain Marvel as a character just hasn't crossed over and connected with mainstream audiences, and the fact that Marvel's Phase 5 already got off to a bad start with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it wasn't really that surprising that the Marvels underperformed, but to see it perform at such a low level really wasn't to be expected, as it was such a massive drop as what came before. So whilst the disappointment of the Marvels wasn't enough to completely destroy the MCU as what many social media headlines have stated, its failure has definitely been a wake-up call both creatively and commercially for Marvel, and we've seen that they've taken multiple steps to try and fix the issues within Phase 5, which overall is a good thing. So we then go on to the 4th entry on this list, and that is SHAZAM! Fury of the Gods. The sequel to the 2019 film, which in some ways was a surprise hit, especially when nobody was really asking for a Shazam movie to begin with. But Fury of the Gods played out as a decent, fun adventure, probably at its best when concentrating on the Shazam family dynamic, where most of the characters were very likeable and overall competent in their roles. Now sadly, once again, we had very weak villains in the Daughters of Atlas, played by both Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu. The movie also descended into CGI crashing and bashing in its climax, and Zachary Levi's character performance did get quite annoying at times. And it also didn't make sense that his Billy Batson alter ego tended to be much more mature and level-headed than what his role was in the Shazam costume. But overall, this was a sequel that was harmless enough, very light-hearted, and had that much more of a family adventure tone about it. Nothing substantial, but nothing really terrible or disastrous either. And really the same can be said for the 3rd entry on this list, which is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the sequel to the first film, which will remain the highest grossing DCU entry, grossing over $1 billion back in 2018. This story this time had Arthur Curry returning, trying to juggle the dual responsibility of being the King of Atlantis alongside fathering a son for the first time. He also has to deal with the ongoing threat of Black Manta, wielding a black trident, looking to unleash a darker force within the Lost Kingdom. And overall, I felt this sequel was a slight improvement on the first film. Again, very light-hearted and breezy, much more in that initiative of being fun and colourful, veering away from the Snyder movies once more. It was a bit better balanced in terms of the humour and the seriousness, and wasn't quite as chaotic as the first film. Again, nothing truly memorable here or special, but very much a fleeting final instalment for the DCU, and ultimately it proved to be nothing more than that. We then come up to the runner-up on this list, and that is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The start of Marvel's Phase 5 really wasn't the disaster that many made it out to be upon its release. Did it at times feel much more like a larger scale team-up movie rather than the heist dynamic that we saw within the first 2 films? Yes, it did. Was Scott Lang's presence undermined by the fact that we had certainly at least 3 other characters who could master the PIM particles technology? We could certainly argue that, yes, but I think overall there was enough adventure and escapism here to make this overall a decent and watchable experience. Michelle Pfeiffer was absolutely great as Janet Van Dyne, and Jonathan Majors was also good in his first real appearance as Kang the Conqueror. Now of course, following recent events, this will be the last time that we see him within this role, and there remains further questions as to whether Marvel will either pursue with this character or write him out from the universe completely. So by no means was Quantumania the MCU at its strongest. I'd probably say it was slightly better than the sequel Ant-Man and the Wasp, but nowhere near as good as the first film from 2015. But overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania definitely was a decent experience overall. So we then come on to the number 1 movie on this list, the movie clearly that most fans and critics agreed on being the best superhero film of 2023 by some distance, and that was of course Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We saw the established galactic bounty hunters, this time going up against the High Evolutionary. The movie's best element was of course the exploration of Rocket's backstory, where we hit far more darker and emotional tones, not normally expected for a Guardians movie, but this backstory definitely gave an added weight and pathos, which made for a much more compelling experience. Whilst not absolutely perfect, it did provide many fans with a satisfactory conclusion to one of the best and popular characters within the MCU, and overall it was one of the better superhero trilogies of recent times. So that's it then in terms of my wrap up of the worst and best superhero movies of 2023, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 coming out at number 1. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other further suggestions regarding any other movies, television series, or any other topics within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on those topics within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.